our gatekeeper in heaven, Captain Gary Sibal, the command chaplain. Of course, Gerald Garcia, Commodore Talon, my classmate when I took up my CGSE in 1999, Colonel Bondigaw. Officers and men of the AFP Reserve Command, mga kamag-anak ng mga mag-graduate, 477 newly graduates of the Special Basic Citizen Military Training Class 1 and Class 2. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. Good morning, sir. When I entered the headquarters of the AFP Reserve Command, I was surprised to see plenty of men in uniform. Bigla akong naging nostalgic. Ang akala ko, as a servisyo pa ako, but when I went down, there was a foyer honor, and I asked the officer in charge if I deserve a foyer honor because I'm not in the military service anymore. Pero sabi niya, yes sir, sabi niya. So, sige na lang. And for the first time, I practiced saluting again when we were entering the colors. So to General Alonso, thank you very much for this honor. And I thank you also for inviting me in this very momentous occasion for the 477 new graduates of this Special Basic Citizens Military Training. I believe you have heard the Chief of Staff stated last year that the #1 threat to national security is not the Communist Party of the Philippines anymore, not the New People's Army, but instead the national disaster that has been visiting our country on a yearly basis. Parang sinasabi niya, ang Communist Party of the Philippines is not politically motivated anymore, but instead they are criminal elements and deeply involved in extortion activities. Ang talagang nagte-threaten ng ating seguridad ay ang massive, strong disasters. And you will see that we are developing to have a new normal. New normal in the sense that the disasters are becoming so strong and inflicting so many casualties and destruction to properties. Yolanda, that hit us in November 8 of last year, barely 3 months ago, was the strongest typhoon that hit Earth. Yan ang pinakamalakas na bagyo na tumama sa buong mundo in recorded history. Ang takbo niya o ang lakas niya ay 320 kilometers per hour with a gustiness of 380 kilometers per hour. Ang lakas o ang speed ng bullet train ng Japan is 300 kilometers per hour. Mas malakas pa siya, mas mabilis pa siya kaysa sa bullet train of Japan. And I think because of that incident, we are now massively reviewing policies and protocols so that our country will be more prepared in the future. Ang preparation natin in scale of to 10, maybe in the scale of 6 to 7 if compared to Typhoon Yolanda's strength. Now, we have to prepare for the worst. And so far, the worst is the effect of Yolanda. And we must prepare for that. And that is only speaking about typhoons. But when we speak about earthquake, there was a study that if ever Metro Manila will be hit by 7.2 magnitude of earthquake, 31,000 people will die. 600,000 will be injured, and millions of infrastructures will be totally or partially destroyed. And so, your training, because I understand from General Alonso that after this basic military training, you will be undergoing trainings on disaster management. And I hope response operations will be included so that you will become a standby force, not only as reservists for threats to national security in as far as foreign aggressors are concerned, but also as standby force as expansion of the armed forces of the Philippines in providing rescue and relief assistance to would-be victims of disasters. So napakahalaga nitong ginagawa ng AFP Reserve Command para magkaroon tayo ng broad base of manpower, reserve corps to serve during emergency. There are some sectors that do not like to have a strong reservist base. And that is why this sector was successful in removing mandatory training of college students in the ROTC. And you know, and we know pretty well, the objectives of this sector who would like to disassociate the public from military training. They would like to drive away the civilians from military training so that more people can be convinced by the Communist Party of the Philippines to join their ranks. I know this will not be successful because this is against our Constitution, and as a country with majority of Roman Catholics, communism will never succeed in our country. So we have a dual role as service, as a standby force or broad base of support for the armed forces of the Philippines in case of external aggression and on disaster management activities. Kailangan natin ang standby force on disaster management because this is the real danger that our country has been facing, not only this year or in the previous years, ever since. Our country is very exposed to hazards. And we are number 3 in the world in as far as basics of numerous hazards happening in a country. Because we are exposed, we are vulnerable, and we are included in what they call the Pacific Ring of Fire. Highly susceptible tayo sa hazard. We are at a high risk, and we need people who would eventually become disaster responders and managers in the future. So with that, I would like to express my deepest gratitude to General Alonso for having been invited, and to the training group, and all the officers and men of the AFP Reserve Command. I commend all of you for a very successful activity. Thank you very much.
Number right after this decision. Yes, sir.
Ay, hindi, ano lang.
Sir.
Sige, sige. Ano?
May continue, sir. Kanina, kinausap ko ng training AFPRESCOM commander. For those of you who wish to join the first day ngayon, and then bukas, on HMES, yung Health Medical Emergency Service Seminar. This will be form part of your military additional training. Libre yung pagkain. I think wala kayong bayaran sa training. 5 consecutive days to. So ito yung sabihin, Saturday, Sunday, 2 po sa Valenzuela, 2 po sa Cavite. So yung first come first serve na maibigay natin kung sinong gusto, yun yung ating padadalhin. Okay? So mag-start ngayon yun, and then we are required to give personnel para doon sa training na yan. So ready yung Valenzuela, 2 po sa atin. After this, meron kaming doon tayo sa third floor. No? Magko-call tayo kay Commodore Talon and then the G-Staff of the Civil Military Affairs Brigade. Andun din si Group Commander, si Colonel Lucy, nandyan naman. At pagkatapos noon, mag-call, meron tayong module spy. Nakapag-ready pa kayo ng pagkain niyo?
Yes, sir.
So, nagpa-ready na ako sa taas ng, ng table. May dahon na saging tayo. May kompleto tayo. So, kaya ginawa natin sa taas kasi nandun yung office natin. No? Sa taas, yung third seat. So, binigyan kayo ng time para mag personal necessity, distraction kasi tapos na yung part ko bilang course director. So, sabi ko noon, ano natatanda nyo? Once the trainings begins, our friendship ends. And now the training ends, our friendship begins. Okay? So, ganun lang. Ang role ko kasi is mag-train. Pagkatapos dito, turn over ko kayo sa ATG. So, I have no longer control sa inyo, but specifically for this day, until such time na makalis tayo sa kampo. Okay? So, after that, i-turn over kayo sa CIMA Brigade, sa group. Hindi ko na alam kung sinong hawak. But as far as I'm concerned, hanggat hindi pa lumalabas yung inyong serial number, andun pa rin tayo. Liwanag. Your serial number will, katulad sabi ni Commander AFPRESCOM, Alonso, ibibigay yun sa inyo as soon as possible. Masyadong marami. Kung napansin nyo yung ibang grupo, meron dyan just no knowledge about military orientation kasi ang kanilang teaching is bantay-bayan. No? So, iba yung category nila. So, there are still some lectures or orientation na ibibigay pa sa kanila. Sa inyo siguro, ano na lang, leveling na lang kung how far you can go as far as training is concerned. So, I'm pretty much assured na hindi tayo malumuran dito. Very much competent as well na even dito man na magtanong sa bawat isa, masasagot ng bawat isa. So, I hope na this closing exercise will help you an orientation on what to become really a soldier of our country. By the way, tentative on March 16, we will be having our own recognition day back home sa Imus. So doon ay mas mapipil ninyo yung individual recognition of receiving the individual certificate. Kung napansin nyo kanina, in part yung binigay because of dami, no? Hindi kayang gawin yun. So therefore, nag-organize kami nila Colonel Lucy and Commodore Talon will be joining us tentative on March 16, that is Saturday. Gagawin natin to kung 15 Saturday. Not 15. Si 15 ba Saturday? Anyway, to be arranged, no? Basta hindi matapos tong March na to, magkakaroon tayo ng individual recognition. Isama nyo yung inyong mga mahal sa buhay, yung mga hindi nyo na isama, and then doon tayo sa Cavite. Okay? So doon, witness nyo talaga yung individual recognition. Siguro bago dumating yon, you have your own serial number, pati yung inyong rango. Kaya wala na tayong problema.